Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Line and welcome to Veganpalooza 2012 Vegetarian World Summit. I'm your co-host, Steve Prusack, and we're ready to bring our next guest on, and it's Philip Wollen, famed vegan philanthropist, recipient of the Australian of the Year Award, and former vice president of Citibank, whose recent impassioned oration on behalf of animals has gone viral on the internet. His foundation, the Kindness Trust, promotes kindness to all living beings. And to lead the way, our friend and co-host, Dr. Will Tuttle.
Great. Thank you, Steve. I'm really delighted, beyond words, I think, to have our next guest, Philip Wollen, with us here on Veganpalooza 2012. A lot of people in the United States may not be familiar with Philip, but I think in Australia, of course, and he's well known there, and I think really all over the world. His trust, the Kindness Trust, actually is supporting over 500 organizations worldwide to reduce suffering to animals and to children and to people with diseases and many different types of problems. And so this is a man who was actually, in his earlier career, a very high-flying banker who has seen the light. So I'd like to, I'm just so glad you're with us because anyone, if you haven't seen his wonderful animals, his speech at the Animals Should Be Off Our Plates debate, you can see it online on YouTube. You really should see that. It's very, very inspiring. So I'd like to ask you, Philip, what made a high-flying investment banker decide on such a radical change to give away everything you have, and as you say, you'd like to die penniless? Can you please tell us about that?
Sure. I was a merchant banker with Citibank, running the mergers, acquisitions, and takeovers business for this part of the world. And I was mandated to do an advisory assignment for a large conglomerate. And I went around and had a look at all their operations in various industries. And one of them I saw turned out to be a slaughterhouse. And I've got to tell you, I have never been so shocked and terrified in all my life. The experience was profound. Now, I have to say that I was a meat eater at the time. In fact, my favorite food was filet mignon and lobster. So I guess the question people often ask me is, what made you at that time decide to give up the world of lobster and Learjets in exchange for shelters and slaughterhouses? So if there was one seminal event, I guess it would be that experience in that slaughterhouse. And the experience marked me forever. And I decided I was going to do everything I could to find out more about this. And my journey has taken me to all around the world, I guess, since then, to see some absolutely horrific things. And the effect was so profound, well, I have to say, is that I decided there and then on the spot I was going to take all the money I'd ever made and give it away with warm hands and die broke. I have to say, so far, we're right on budget.
Wow. Yes, and what kinds of projects are you involved with in supporting? I mean, I think it would be helpful for listeners to know actually what you're doing with the Winsome Constance Kindness Trust and the work, supporting the work that other people are doing.
Sure. It's very simple. I call it a Kindness Trust. Basically, I wanted to preserve some sort of anonymity, and Winsome is my mum, Constance is my grandmother. So I decided I didn't want anybody to know about me. I could do this thing quite anonymously. Of course, events have since overtaken me, but I basically focused on what I call the five fingers: children, animals, the environment, the terminally ill, and aspiring youth. But a disproportionate amount of my efforts actually goes into the animal kingdom, or the non-human animal kingdom. Although I do support projects like schools and orphanages, shelters, sanctuaries, and biogas plants, disaster relief. And we've got things like oncology, neurosurgery, and road trauma, even the arts, music and ballet for children. So I don't know how many projects we had, maybe 500, I can't remember. So the footprint is fairly eclectic, and it's a day-to-day proposition. We have a network of many thousands of people around the world that Professor Drucker, the late Professor Drucker, called my low-cost probes. They're not on the payroll, but they're on email, and they do all the due diligence and investigation on things that I'm doing, and we stay in touch, every day.
Right. What countries are we talking about? I mean, is this primarily in Australia, or are you global, or?
No, well, we have a number of projects in Australia, but the footprint goes, Australia, Cambodia, China, Indonesia, India, South Africa, Tanzania, Kenya, right across the Middle East, Ukraine, Greece, Romania, even the United States, the UK. I think we're in 40-something countries. We're getting quite big now in the Philippines. I'm going up to Thailand shortly to have a look at some of our projects there. We say our projects, but they're really local projects that we fund or provide with advice, or more often than not, it's simply encouragement when they feel down and tired and exhausted. We're there as a resource to help in whatever way we can. And when I say we, it sounds grand, but it's really just my wife, Trix, and I.
Wow, that's incredible. What are some of your? Do you have any favorite groups you work with particularly, or for some reason? I'm kind of curious if there's some like that.
Yes, I wouldn't say favorites, but there are some projects that seem to take a fair amount of my time. In India, for example, we have projects like animal birth control, for street dogs, for example.
Mm-hmm.
We catch the dogs on the streets, put them in our dog catching vans, and take them back to a shelter where they're neutered, spayed, and given anti-rabies vaccinations. And a couple of days later, they're released back on the same street corner where they've lived all their lives. So we keep the carrying capacity of that particular precinct constant, and we hope that in a certain length of time, in a matter of a few years, after performing this procedure on, say, 70% of the dog population, we'll be able to reduce the number of dogs living in the street. So that's in Vishakhapatnam. We've also built a fairly extensive kindness farm on the property nearby, which is, I think, about 60 acres. And we've planted about 30,000 plants and trees and shrubs. We've got about 1,500 animals, like cows, horses, dogs, cats, including a clinic, an animal hospital. It has a kindness kitchen, and we provide free vegan food to all our shelter staff, which is about 60 people. So we know for a fact that they're going to get one very nutritious meal every day, and it's hot. And it means that they're not going to go home and eat meat. So that's one of the projects that we run out of VSPCA in Vishakhapatnam. And tacked on the end of it, we discovered that for centuries that poor people have lived in the streets with the dogs, and they'd sleep under a tree or under a shop awning. So every year when I went there, I tried to come up with a new idea. So we've come up with a thing called the Kindness Mobile Vegan Restaurant. We've signed a contract with a restaurant, and he prepares a hot vegan meal, including rice, a delicious curry, a kind of soup, a lot of vegetables, whatever fruit is in season, apples or bananas or pineapples or something like that, and a bottle of water. It's wrapped up in a very large banana skin and then wrapped up again in newspaper. So we have about 100 meals a day, and we've got a contract with a guy who has a vehicle, and we use one of our vehicles as well, and we deliver this food to various feeding points in Vishakhapatnam for the poor people, because we find that those poor people have the dogs sitting at their feet all day, and they share what little meager food they have. So by feeding these poor people, we're also helping the animals. But we do tell them that this is not charity. We would like them to keep their eyes open, and if they see somebody whipping a horse, or a dog has given birth to puppies, or a lorry has hit a cow, or something like that, they should go into the shops, pick up the phone, it's free of charge to them, and call our shelter, and we'll send the ambulance down to pick up the animal. So we had one, we've got 4, and my plan, depending on how long I have left, I'm planning to have about 100, and we'll try and brand them a bit like Starbucks, so when I'm gone, someone else can come over and quite easily take them on. So that's
Wow.
one of the projects in Vishaka, but every project we have is special in its own right.
And where is Vishaka exactly?
It's on the Bay of Bengal. It's in a state called Andhra Pradesh.
I see,
They speak a language called Telugu. It's a very interesting place, but it's right on the coast. But they've also extended. We've also built about 5 turtle sanctuaries for the olive ridley turtle, which is being absolutely decimated by netting and pollution. So we're helping the young turtles hatch and protecting them as much as possible, and that has been quite successful. I'm pretty sure.
Wow. So these are Kindness Farms is basically a sanctuary for hundreds of animals, and the mobile vegan restaurants are serving vegan food to homeless people who would otherwise be hungry. And
Yes.
so these are really creative ideas. I love that.
They're all experiments, Bill.
Right. I was wondering when I heard your speech, and I'm probably right, I think, in estimating that a lot of the people who are listening have heard your recent speech in the debate about whether animals should be off the menu. You, to me, very poignantly juxtaposed the cries of pain, the screams of animals who are being slaughtered and whales who are being shot and so forth, with the cries of pain of your own father who was suffering from diseases that came from eating animal foods. And so there was this, to me, your speech was this wonderful combination of showing this suffering that goes on in the outer world, the environmental devastation, as well as the cruelty to animals, but also showing the irony and the interconnections that happens more on the inner level. When we're cruel to animals, it always comes back to us. And I just think that in your own life, you've seen so much suffering. It seems to me, even though you started out obviously being on the other side of things as a banker. Can you say something about your own journey? Like, was it difficult for you to make these connections and then to actually become a vegan? To actually, was it a process becoming a vegan, or were you able to do it pretty quickly?
I think I became a vegetarian first. I hadn't made the connection with dairy at all.
Right.
Dairy looked so benign. You'd see the cows on the hill, and it looked like a scene from Shelley and Wordsworth, and there were daffodils waving in the distance. And I thought that at least that is not too bad, until I discovered what dairy really means. And dairy really is a gulag of despair, I have to say. I make no apologies for that. So when I did understand the situation, becoming vegan was a relatively, I think, a relatively easy choice for me. I made it almost I just looked at it logically. I traveled around the world, and I discovered that there were thousands of animals that people ate in other countries that I didn't eat, thousands of them. So I simply added 5 animals more to the list. When I went to China, for example, or Indonesia, or Vietnam, or India, or Pakistan, animals that I just could not imagine eating. Dogs or cats, bears, bats, horses, hamsters. I didn't eat any of them. So I just added 5 more. Cows, sheep, pigs, chicken, and fish to the list. And once I did that, life just became so simple. And I've been a vegan ever since, so now I look in the mirror in the morning. At least I can do that with a clear conscience.
Right. Oh, that's so great. I know. So do you feel that veganism is the path to happiness for individuals and for the culture? Is that something
I could guarantee it's the path to happiness for the animal kingdom, for 2 billion sentient living beings every week. If you think it's hard being vegan, think about how hard it is for the animals when we're not. That's my theory. Being vegan may not be the only path to human happiness, but I'll guarantee you it's the shortest, the most fulfilling, and one that is certainly, beyond the shadow of a doubt, the most authentic, the one that's most easily defendable. I think that we have a wonderful commercial on TV in Australia about drink driving, and the government sponsors it. And it says that if you drink and drive, you're a bloody idiot. And I've got a sign in Kindness House that says that if you're not a vegan, you're a bloody vandal.
Wow.
So, but I think I tend to get away with it because I own the building.
I was going to ask you, you seem, I have not been to Australia, but the sense I have is that you are highly respected in Australia. After all, you have the recipient of the Australian of the Year award and so forth, and yet you are very public and visible, it seems to me, about your veganism, and veganism very often in a culture that's heavily meat-eating and dairy-eating, like in Australia as well as here, obviously, views veganism with quite a bit of distrust. So I'm just wondering, how do people deal with Philip Wallen? How do you find that you're everyone is happy to have you talk about veganism there, or do you have a difficult time sometimes talking about it to people?
Yes, it's interesting you say that. All my life, I've actually been quite a low-key person. Rupert Murdoch wrote a lengthy article about me here in Melbourne a few years ago, and he described me as reclusive. And in a sense, I really am. But when something is really important, or the cruelty is so egregious, and I do get an opportunity to speak out in a public forum, I don't shirk that responsibility. I mean, I've got an obligation to actually say what I think. However, you're quite correct. I've copped a lot of flack from the meat and dairy industry, the hunting industry, people like that. But I guess that just goes with the territory. You've got to stand up, not just for what you believe in, but for something that is absolutely true. I tell people that the world is crying out for only two things, just two things: leadership and the truth. All we've got to do is tell the truth. I think that it comes from the word satyagraha in India, for example, the truth force. If you tell the truth, you've got a lot of force behind you. Unfortunately, here in the West, we have not. The past hasn't served us well. I'm reminded of Rudyard Kipling when he wrote of young men dying during World War I. And if they ask you why we died, tell them that our fathers lied. And in fact, my parents' generation have lied to us. We've been sold a bill of goods which is utterly false. Killing animals for food or fun or fashion or whatever fad we have is morally wrong, and it's fundamentally stupid. I hope I'm not boring you, but I can give you some reasons why I think it's fundamentally stupid.
Yeah, go ahead.
My favorite historian is a wonderful woman named Barbara Tuchman, and she defines folly as acting against our own best interests. That's folly.
Right.
Well, we know that water is the new oil. Nations are soon going to be going to war for it.
Right.
Well, underground aquifers that took millions of years to fill are now running dry. As a Boy Scout, I drilled my first well and struck sweet water at about 80 feet. Today, at our orphanage in Bangalore and nearby, we're at 800 feet and sucking mud. In China, we hear that the drills are at 3,000 feet and the drill heads are still dry. And it takes 50,000 liters of water to produce 1 kilo of beef, 1,000 glasses of water to produce 1 glass of milk. And today there's 1 million people who are hungry. 20 million people this year will die from malnutrition. If we cut our meat consumption by only 10%, we'll free up enough land, arable land, to feed 100 million people. and eliminating meat will end starvation forever. And, I see this happening almost on a daily basis. Food prices around the world, particularly in my theater, are skyrocketing. It used to cost, for Thai rice, $197 a ton. And then it went up to $1,015 a ton, a five-fold increase in 5 months.
Wow.
It's astonishing. So many poor countries are selling their grain to the West for hard currency, while their own children starve in their arms. And what do? We feed it to livestock. So we can eat a steak? I know I'm not the only one who sees this as a crime. And now China, of course, is acquiring massive tracts of millions and millions of acres of land in Africa and in South America to feed her increasingly rich and carnivorous population.
Right.
So really, it's a disaster waiting to happen. We're so close to the tipping point. The game's going to be over. I spoke to a group of international students yesterday at the university about careers and leadership and living intelligent lives. And to be an intelligent, I don't think you can live an intelligent life and not be vegan. I mean, it's self-contradictory.
Right.
It's such a blinding glimpse of the obvious that it's arguing with people on that point is trying to have a conversation with a member of the Flat Earth Society. We've got to do it, I guess. And, we obey people we don't trust, to buy things we don't need, to impress people we don't like, using money we don't have, for gratifications that don't last, killing animals we don't hate, for pleasures that don't satisfy, dreaming of a life we don't deserve, and praying for an afterlife that doesn't exist. We are a stupid species. And that's why I'm so drawn to Barbara Tuchman. We've got to understand our folly. And it's not just a question of animal rights. It's also about human wrongs. It's about social justice. Justice must be blind to race or to color and religion, but also species. If she's not blind, she will be a weapon of terror. And today, slaughterhouses are tangible proof of the failure of ethical jurisprudence, an absolute fact. I have a feeling that the meat industry will be like the old Soviet Union. We'll wake up one morning and it'll be gone. It must end because it is useless. The Stone Age didn't end because we ran out of stones. This industry will end because we run out of excuses. So I'm sorry if I'm boring you, but these are opinions I've held for a long time, and I'm yet to be persuaded that they're wrong.
So you think that the whole animal agriculture industry can come toppling down and disappear in a relatively short period of time, actually, because it is so stupid in a sense? I mean, that it's just so horribly inefficient and devastating to our health and to water and to the earth and land, and that we'll be able relatively quickly, potentially, to just get rid of it?
Yeah, I think so. I speak to people all around the world sometimes, and they're all good, decent, honest, caring people. And they all have one thing in common. They all want to change the world, as long as they don't have to change themselves. The life doesn't work that way. First we change in our hearts, and then the world follows. So when you ask, can we do this quickly? Well, we need to do it quickly. By 2048, all our fisheries will be dead, the lungs and the arteries of the earth. I'm very, very closely involved with sea shepherds, so I know quite a lot about the oceans. The livestock industry and the pollutants that they put into the ocean have created these hypoxic dead zones of 1 million square kilometers, killing plants and animals and all these ocean creatures. And it's so full of junk. The Pacific Gyre now is so full of junk, plastic, and human feces, it's created a floating footprint bigger than India. We treat these oceans as our private pantry, and it's a public toilet. These things have got to stop, and we've just got to take animals not just off the menu, but out of any notion that treats them as a resource. They're not property, Will. Animals are not our property.
Right.
The definition of property is something that you own, that you can use, abuse, or destroy. Animals have none of those characteristics. You know, they're not just collective biology for us to use. Each of them has their own individual biography, and we've got to recognize this fact. So insofar as time is concerned, I don't think we've got a lot of time left, but I do know that some people, I remember a guy telling me in Thailand many years ago, if you want to travel far, travel together, but if you want to travel fast, travel alone. Unfortunately now, we have no choice. We've got to travel far, and we've got to travel fast. So I really hope that this vegan movement moves and gathers momentum. But as you say, the word vegan has been hijacked by industry, and it's become a derogatory term. So I found a solution that certainly works for me. I don't know about other people. The most beautiful word, I think, that's ever written at any time in any country in human history actually came from India, from the Upanishads 4,000 years ago. Ahimsa, nonviolence to any living being. Now, I think if we adopted that attitude of nonviolence, not just in what we do, but in what we think and what we say, we will stop killing animals, stop killing and hurting each other, and we will live productive, healthy lives, caring for the planet. Now, what could be more rewarding than that? Once again, another blinding glimpse of the obvious.
Right. You know, I've often said that veganism is really a modern iteration of the word ahimsa in many ways, isn't it? It's basically the same exact thing.
Yeah, indeed. I can remember I was working in a project way out in the jungle, and I got to meet some very interesting people. And they were all curious as to why I had decided to take such a radical, if you like, a radical stand in giving away everything I had. And I was deadly serious. I've been doing it ever since. And what we basically concluded after these days of being in the jungle, that I think it was it was something that affected me quite deeply, that if you want to increase a man's share of happiness, don't increase his possessions. Simply decrease his desires. And that's basically why I think I feel quite content nowadays. And people say, well, what's your sort of yardstick with all your friends from the old days of investment banking and sport and that kind of thing? And I think I've concluded that a man is measured not by how much money he makes, but how much of it he's prepared to give away, particularly to strangers. And I'm absolutely convinced I didn't find my character on Wall Street, because it lives on the road to Damascus. And the unexamined life, as we all know, is not worth living. In fact, it's not a life at all. It's a life sentence. So when vegans start to interact with the animal kingdom, they see things that other people don't. They feel things that other people could not even understand. But once the penny drops, the whole world changes, both for the animal and for the person participating in that process. And I think that's really what's happened to me.
Wow, that's really very touching, and I'm so grateful. The actual theme for this last day is spirituality and veganism, and even though you're not talking directly, in a sense, about spirituality, you are talking actually directly about spirituality in the sense of ahimsa and compassion and living our lives as expressions of caring and love. And I don't think there's any higher path, actually, to spiritual awakening than to realize that we are all interconnected and to have a sense of mercy and kindness for those who are at our mercy and who are suffering. And you certainly are an example of this spiritual life being lived in a way that's quiet, really, in the background. It's how it seems to me. But then when you're called forth, you can see that there's an enormous inner understanding and strength, and I think really the whole world is blessed by that. And so we really, here at Veganpalooza 2012, we really want to just thank you so much, Philip, for all the ongoing efforts you've been making and for your just unremitting willingness to speak the truth, to hold to the truth of satyagraha and ahimsa. And I'm sure the animals, if they could thank you, would certainly do that, and so many others as well. It's really been an honor to have you with us. Thanks again for telling us this story. Yes,
thank you very much.
Right, thank you. And Steve, you have anything you want to close with?
Just, I really felt that encapsulated this event. It's presented in such an emotional and articulate way and a voice for the animals and the planet, Philip, that thankfully you're not a recluse and that you're coming forward and saying this, because it is such a sane message and really brings home this event. So thank you for being here and helping to close out this event. Dr. Tuttle and I will be back at the top of the hour to explore the World Peace Diet and more, so stay tuned for that. Thank you all. Thank you all, our VIP members, for supporting this event, our sponsors. Join us at the top of the hour, and a big thank you to Philip Wallen and all of our amazing guests for this event. We'll be back at the top of the hour. Thank you.